Thanks for joining us today in the top 5 announcement. So for those of you who are here for the first time, we're going to tell you what it's all about. For those of you who have been here before, you already know what it's all about. Before we start off, I just want to reintroduce my colleague, Una. For those of you who did attend the
Hey.
previous webinar, you already know her. For those of you who are new, Una is one of my colleagues, and she's actually my manager. She leads the product team. And one of the benefits of her hosting the previous session is actually that her background also comes from marketing. So a lot of insights that she was actually telling you guys comes from experience. It's not just, just because. It's actually what's happening in the real world scenarios when people are analyzing different marketing campaigns, different campaign data, and so forth. But yeah, so what today is all about, let me just quickly reshare the screen. So the main reason why we're here today is to go through the top 5 reports that we have evaluated and put in a top 5 for that particular challenge. So in this one, it was the marketing campaign data analysis. The main reason why we're doing this is because we also want to give you some additional feedback when it comes to these reports. So the main reason why we're hosting these sessions, and for those of you who have been here before, you already know this, but is we're trying to create an environment where you guys can learn, not just from your own reports, but from others people's experiences. So you can see what type of reports they're building, what feedback they're receiving, what kind of thought process we have when we're looking at these reports. The main idea about all of this is for you to give basically an environment where you can learn, where you can listen, where you can see some of the most common mistakes, for example, that people are creating when developing reports. Not all of them are major. Most of them are pretty minor in most cases, but it's the small little details that matter the most. And you've heard me saying this before and again, right? All those small little things is what creates the overall experience for the end user. And that's what we're really all trying to cater to and create basically an environment where the end user can feel comfortable. Because one thing I want to emphasize on and reiterate multiple times probably today is remember that at the end of the day, you as a developer, you're not creating the report for yourself, most likely. You're creating it for somebody else to consume. You're just the resource that's creating the report and the whole, UI, UX experience there. The fact that you think it's easy to navigate and understand doesn't mean that the end user is going to think the same. So always make sure you give the same report to some other people, give it to the end user and ask questions. Making a report is 99% is not going to be a straightforward process. If you're one of those who can actually create a report with a first try and not having to change anything, I most sincerely envy you. I haven't done that yet. I've always had back and forths. That's just how things are, right? And the most important thing about, once we go through the top 5 is, of course, we're going to be announcing the winner. So we're going to be telling you guys who is the best report creator for this particular month. So any other words from you, Una?
Yeah, I am just glad to see so many people here. I was very excited to also be part of the team, evaluating these reports and sending the feedback as always. And I was very curious to see, having the webinar and providing some insights from my side at the beginning. So what's going to the end result, what the end result is going to look like. So I'm just, I'm very excited to be here and kind of be with this challenge throughout the whole process.
I know what you mean. It's usually the best part.
Yeah, especially when the topic is so close to me. I mean, the marketing, and I had very clear vision of what the perfect report could look like in this case, and it was interesting for me to compare. What are different takes on the data here.
I know what you mean. It's the same way as I felt when we were looking at support tickets, because that's what I do every single day, right? So I kind of know what I'm looking for. And when I'm looking at these reports, why are you guys not telling me this? This is very important.
Yep.
So, all right, without further ado, I guess we can start off with the first report. But before that, I just want to reiterate for those of you guys who are new, and this is the first webinar that you're ever joining, that the challenges themselves can be found on our website. So for example, if I quickly go and open up our website, So let's quickly go here. Let's go ahead under challenges. And every single month, we're hosting 2 challenges, one together with OnyxData and one together with FP20 Analytics. So right now, we're going through OnyxData June session. If you open it up, this is where you can find all the necessary information. You can see all the submitted reports. You can see the information about the challenge itself, the rules on how to participate, if there's any additional brief. Sometimes we give you, let's say, certain questions we want you to answer, or at least give you some ideas on what to analyze and that sort of stuff. And of course, the judging criteria, so you know, okay, what is it that we're looking for when we're going through these reports. You can, of course, get the most important thing about the challenge, the data set, also here. You can also check all the past challenges, which is something I definitely recommend you guys to do, because in every single one of these challenges, you can see all the submissions. And for every single one of these submissions, so for example, if I go right here, let's say you see this one, for example, right? You see this one report and say, okay, that's actually something similar to what I want to create. Perfect. You can download the PBX file. So you can check how the developer has actually created, if there's anything interesting that you would like to incorporate into your reports, if there are certain setups that you like. So we give you all the tools on how to basically recreate certain scenarios, learn from other people, and like I said, right, cater that environment where there's a lot of information that you can process. Of course, if you want to. If you just want to compete in the challenge, well, come here, download the dataset, check the brief, make sure that you don't miss anything, and submit the report. That's it. But if you want to get something additional from it, we provide you all the possible options. So yeah, the timeline, everything you need to know about the challenge is going to be in the challenge page. And one other thing is, remember that whenever you sign up for a challenge, you also have access to registering and getting a developer's license. The developer's license is completely free, so there's no money associated with it whatsoever, at least from your side. From our side, yeah, of course it costs something, but from your side, it's completely free. And you get access to all the visuals, all the capabilities, so you can utilize them however you want to. So that's also one of the benefits of the challenge. Now, as far as the challenge itself goes, let's go ahead and open up. Yeah, let's start with this one. So one of the submissions that has gotten into the top 5 comes from Rigoberto Garcia. So congratulations, Rigoberto. You're kind of a common denominator now at the top 5 in recent challenges. So, you know, getting the hang of it, I'm guessing. But yeah, congratulations, man. You're in the top 5. And let's open up the report and check what you have to offer. I'm also going to open up the full screen mode just so it kind of uses the real estate a little bit better. So I guess I can start off first on this one.
Sure.
The most important thing that I kind of noticed here is, you know, we've always talked about colors, and I guess everybody kind of understands it now, so you're always utilizing the same color palette. But what I want to reiterate is make sure that the color you're creating or associating with something is used exactly in the same principle everywhere, right? Don't try to mix and match these. And the reason why I'm going through this is because, sure, I understand the principle here. You can't really associate, for example, you know, this particular shade of blue with the whole column of summer. That wouldn't work. So you're going with a different route. That's fine. But the issue that I had, and it's a very small, quick fix that you could easily do, is this one. So summer is in dark blue. If you look at engagement by city, your quick thought process is, okay, so that's probably summer, right? But if I hover over it, it's actually fall, right? So it's the same dimension that you're utilizing in both of them. Make sure that the color is the same. It's like I said, right? The fix is probably like, I don't know, 20 seconds. But these small little things is something that you can easily miss as a developer. That's why I always recommend give the report to somebody else. Ideally, if you give it to somebody who doesn't even know what he's looking at, because you can kind of see their thought process there. You can see what they're clicking on, what they're doing, and that's what shows you what to pay more attention to. Other than that, I like the fact on how you created the layout for it. So it's not very complex. It's very brief and easy to kind of understand what's really happening here. You have the ability to drill down and choose for different components, but what comes with it is, since you're using the same dimension, This is essentially the effect that you're getting. As soon as I drill down into one of the slices, I completely cut off everything else, right? So my recommendation would probably be to utilize a different dimension. And you had a lot of dimensions actually in this particular data set. You could even create your own dimensions, as Una actually mentioned in her webinar. So make sure you always utilize the information that we give to you. Other than that, what else? I would probably rethink this particular visual. The main reason why I wouldn't, sorry, not wouldn't, but would rethink it is because you can see there are two metrics, engagement rate and conversion rate. These two values is not something you typically sum up. It's something you kind of try to compare to each other, or understand at least there's some sort of correlation between it. So something like a line chart would probably be better. If you really want to stick to columns, then I would be utilizing a zero-based approach, so that both columns start at the same location at the bottom, and just make one of them a little bit more narrow. So it's one of those things. What else? You have the possibility of having the info overlay, which is always great for new users, because you never know who's going to be end up using your reports, right? So giving them a little bit of help is always beneficial. You have your clear slicer buttons, which is fine. The switches between the sort of navigation, don't have really anything against it. The only other thing that I noticed here was, yeah, it's actually something that you're gonna guys see in a lot of these reports. You're trying to always split by the same dimension. So what ends up happening is whenever I select something, it basically creates a very limited view for me. Because in order to see something split down, and I have to drill down here, then I have to drill down here, even go down even more, right? So there's a lot of unnecessary actions that I need to do. So I would probably rethink those dimensions and make it a little bit more dynamic, so it's a bit more interesting to the end user. But, you know, it's completely up to you to how you want to create these. Una, any comments from your side?
Yeah, well, obviously I will try to comment this from sort of, okay, I'm the end user. I'm the marketing person looking at the report. And so a couple of things that I kind of saw right away. I will start, I guess, from the detail things and then move to the more overall things. But these two names for the tabs for the pages, overview and summary, it's something that confused me. And actually, this is not the only report where I saw this, because essentially it means the same thing. I guess my question is, what's the difference there? Because as an end user, I'm looking and seeing, okay, this is the overview page. Okay, it's going to give me some kind of overall overlook on the campaigns. And then I see the summary, and then I'm wondering, okay, what's there then? So that's kind of confusing. So think about how you name things, because that is actually how a user navigates through the report, how they understand what kind of data is going to be where. And this was kind of confusing. And the other thing about the navigation, what confused me here is that two tabs have names, and then the third one has icons on it. And at the very first impression, I clicked there by mistake, sort of just to see why. It didn't occur to me that it's actually the third tab. So from this user story perspective, from the user journey perspective, that was a bit confusing. Yeah, but from the data analysis perspective, the biggest thing here, what is missing, and yeah, I didn't really see it, I think, in any of the reports, is that I see details, okay, I see trends months over months, but what I don't see is the answer to the question whether it's bad or good what I'm seeing. So that is one thing I mentioned in the webinars, and I really hope that you guys, get creative with this. Whenever we are analyzing marketing campaigns, whenever we're looking on clicks, revenue, impressions, whatever, all those metrics, it's not enough just to see that we had 1,000 clicks. What is important is to see whether it was enough, whether we were aiming for 1,000, whether we reached the target that we wanted, And that's sort of within the company. But then the next question again is, how do we compare with our competitors? And those are metrics, those KPIs are actually very easy to Google to see, you know, what are the industry average for how digital campaigns are performing. And these were kind of things that, you know, I really hope that you guys go on internet, look up and just add it to your reports as an additional layer, because that's where the really true power and value from the report comes, you know, to quickly see whether it's good what I'm seeing or bad, and how we are comparing. Because just metrics, it's well, simply not enough to make business decisions for the future campaigns. Yeah, I think that's the main thing I can add here. But overall, it was a nice report that I liked that it didn't have too many metrics here, I guess, because, you know, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. So it was concise. You were kind of able, you know, to see main things here, get a quick overview, and yeah, it was a well-structured report. But I was missing this, where we are in the overall picture. Yeah, that's it from my side.
So yeah, guys, my main question would be, you know, from this perspective and for hearing from Una, what Una said is, how many of you did actually attend the first webinar, and how many of you actually listened to what she said? Because I can guarantee, because I listened to the webinar, she mentioned this multiple times. Because the main idea about every single report is, sure, one sort of side of it is to showcase the actual results, and the other side of every single report that's out there is to understand, okay, but is it good or bad, right? What's the current standing? Have we met the targets? Are we below, above the targets? What's really happening? So one of the things that I encourage you going on into other challenges is, don't stop yourself at the data that we provide to you. And we've said this multiple times, right? You can enhance the data set however you want to. Right, we're just giving you the basis. So create some sort of thresholds, create some sort of budgets, or whatever it is that you're looking into, to sort of give you a better representation of how it could look like, right? Because showcasing all the data is just one side of it. But for every other business decision that's out there, if they would see this, they would still ask you, okay, but like Una already mentioned, is it good or bad? Right, I can see the numbers, but I have no idea, are we doing good or bad? So always take note of that. All right, let's go into the next report. So the next report that has gotten into the top 5 belongs to Rashmi Gandhi. So congratulations, Rashmi. Let's open it up and see what the report has to offer. All right, Una, you maybe want to take the first. Go at it.
Yeah, so for this report, I think what we liked here the most, there was some sort of I like this matrix, I guess, structure, how you can look at the data, that you have this campaign ad channel device on the top, so you can quickly filter and look at those kind of topics. And then you have timeline and or months analysis on the side. So that was very easy and useful to look at. Yeah, also, I think from the storytelling point of view, you have the overview, you have then you go into click analysis, you know, you look at how clicks have performed all over these, again, campaign, ad, channel, all those different dimensions. And then you also have cost analysis, which is very, very important when you look at the campaigns. You know, you want to see how well the money performed. And in this case, well, the data that was provided kind of showed a very well return of investment, but it may not be always the case for the campaigns. Yeah, well, I have to say this, I was really pleased to see the ZoomCharts new visual scatter visual here. As being part of the product team, yeah, well done of using the visual, which is still in the beta development, but I mean, the scatter also is something that the marketing utilizes in their analysis. So well done on that part. Well, I can only, I guess, say again here that I am still missing this, whether it's good or bad, but all over the report was well structured, and there was it was an interesting report to go through. Let's say it like this. If I would be the end user, it would be interesting for me actually to go through this report and look at all the aspects. And of course, with the ZoomCharts visuals, it's also very, very nice that you can drill on into details in that way as well.
All right. From my side, I would probably, I like the overall sort of principle of the layout and how it's been set up. Like you mentioned, it sort of reminds me of a matrix where you have columns and rows and you're basically playing around with these two variables. The one thing though that I would probably rethink is the order of the cards. The main reason why I would do that is to help out the user, right? Because we have, for example, impressions, clicks, conversions, conversion rate, total spend, revenue, CTR, likes, comments, shares, and so forth. I would most likely separate them into little groups just so the user can focus on, okay, here we're talking about the statistics of campaign, here we're talking about the actual conversion and return, here we're talking about some additional statistics like comments. You're kind of already doing this, but they're all segregated equally, right? They're all separated in equal spaces, so it doesn't feel like something is more important than anything else. And especially since we don't have a benchmark that's showing us whether it's good, bad, or you're not putting my attention to something in specific, I'm kind of just going through them and floating around trying to see what is what, not focusing on what's important currently. That's one thing. The other thing is, and this is not just in this report, this is actually in almost every single one of the reports. Guys, when you make a slicer for months, whatever date dimension it is, always double check your slicers. I've told this before and I'm going to say it again, because if I click on May, for example, everything's fine, right? I filter out the data and I can see some sort of related data. Now, in the data set, I know that we don't have any data in January and February. So what happens if I choose one of them? I get a blank report, right? You could easily avoid this just by adding another filter which filters out any blank values. So if there's nothing to return here, just exclude these months. Do not showcase items or months or dimensions or whatever it could be that is not related to the particular view. The one thing you want to always double check and make sure is that the interactions that the user does not break the report. And I think you can all agree with me that this would substitute a break in the report. I just simply click on one of the filters and suddenly I have nothing. Again, it's a very simple fix. Open up Power BI Desktop, go to filter panel, basically apply either a basic filter since you have preset data. If you want it to be more logical, then you could easily create, for example, something like a DAX measure or just advanced filtering, which would make sure that this is not blank. So there are a few options on how you would do that. But the idea itself is good. I like the fact that, like I said, you can combine different months and so forth, but just be cautious about what options you give to the user. This is why me, Federico, everybody in LinkedIn you've seen probably at some point has mentioned this. Make sure you play around with your slicers that you have in the report pages. So that's for that. As for click analysis, like Una also mentioned, and this is what I really like about that I'm starting to see in more and more reports, is that people are utilizing field parameters. It's a very simple feature, but yet very powerful. And the reason why it fits very nicely in here is because you essentially have created 4 different visuals which look at different dimensions. Okay, here you have similarity, but you have different values that you're showcasing there. And instead of just trying to basically, create copies of copies of copies of copies and create a massive page of 20 different visuals, you allow me to switch between the specific metric that I'm interested in. So I don't have to kind of worry about, I know where it's going to be, I'm just changing the value itself. So it's very beneficial in that sense. As for cost analysis, who doesn't really need to understand how much it actually cost and how much we made, right? So you always got to make sure you have some sort of expenditure analysis. I like the scatter plot. I mean, how can I not, right? But I also like the fact that you kind of play around with the idea of having similar data in different visuals. And this was also done in a previous report. So you're focusing on sort of seasonality in one of them, and then you're focusing on the actual timeline itself on the other one. The one thing I would probably play around here maybe is, I don't know, maybe revenue and profit could be something that you, again, create as a stack and compare it to each other. Just from a visual perspective, because currently, well, we can see that there is profit, it's going upwards, but I would also want to understand how much from the revenue is profit. Always think about how you could essentially provide more context with the same amount of information, right? But yeah, overall, it's a great report. You have gotten into the top 5, right? You can't really get in top 5 if it's not a good report. So congratulations to you, and I guess we're good to go to the next one. All right, next one. The next submission that has gotten into the top 5 belongs to Onkar Bhise. So congratulations to you. Let's open it up and take a look at it. So disregard the initial page. I tried to change it, but I must have forgotten it. So that's on me. All right. So for this one, the one thing that I really like about it is you don't really notice it maybe on the first page, right? Because the first page is an overview page, but we're still utilizing the field parameters, so I can easily switch between the campaign and the channel. But if we're going into the second page, this is going into the same principle as we mentioned in the previous report, where it kind of allows you the dynamic switches with the field parameters. You're utilizing different views. That's the timeline. Those are combo bars. These are donut charts showcasing different aspects of the dimensions that were available. And I can easily switch between the specific metric that I'm interested in. There goes the voice crack. But what I'm missing from all of this is, like Una already mentioned, right? How am I doing? Is it good, bad, or what's the current situation? I like the fact that you not just play around with the field parameters to switch the values, but also add it as a legend component. So you basically allow the user either to focus just on the total, if you want to split it on by a legend, or a third dimension, which would be campaign. On this one, a small recommendation for you, Onkar, would be play around with the stacking and clustering capabilities, because I think it would be more beneficial if you would use stacking in this case rather than clustering. And let me comment on that. Why is that? So whenever you have a cluster, what the chart essentially does is it reserves a space within that particular category for where the column is supposed to be. So you can see right here, for example, there's space on the left and right. If we go to these ones, since this is summer period, it kind of sits always on the right. This one always sits on the left. If you combine all of them, it would cover the whole particular category itself. So by creating a stack, you would make sure that even though you just have a single one of them, for example, here in the summer, you wouldn't have this additional white space. Because even though you don't have anything to stack on top or below, it means that you're just bringing them all together and you create the visual that is a lot easier to sort of read for the end user. But again, it's a very small little thing. You can kind of see it happening here. See, the columns suddenly become bigger because I'm essentially disabling the series. So it's something you could easily fix. The cross filtering is there, which is great. You have the possibility of also switching the granularity if you need to. You can go to quarters, months, and so forth. You can switch between the different metrics. The table page is something that I'm definitely not against, because let me tell you one thing. As much as you would like to get rid of tables, it's going to be a while before we do that, guys. Trust me, every C-level report is going to have a table. If it doesn't, tell me what's the use case. I want to hear about it, because my experience is I can do whatever I want. I can create the best looking pages or whatever it is, but at some point, one of the C-level managers is going to be like, okay, now show me that as a table. Okay, fine. Let's go create a table because it's a visual that people are very used to having, right? It's how they've been looking at data for a long time. So it's sort of like their comfort. So you can't really get rid of them. But overall, it's a very good report. And the only other thing that I noticed here is when I started to play around with this particular visual right here. So if I choose, for example, Pinterest, you can see that I have some values. If I choose Facebook, I still have values, which is good. But if I switch to campaigns and I choose based on season, for example, fall, have a little bit of number, choose spring, suddenly I have zeros everywhere. It might be the data itself, but for an end user, you need to provide some sort of context. Why suddenly I have nothing, right? I can understand the comparison versus previous month doesn't really work because spring was the first sort of season that you had available, but the same also happens when you choose summer. I just have zeros across the board, right? Other than that, it's a great report. And Una, any comments from your side?
Yeah, I wanted to add a bit more about the tables because the one other purpose that tables serve very well is to be like a way how to double check the data, to make sure that whatever your visual is showing, you have it's actually showing it correctly. So and in my everyday job, whenever I'm creating a report or there is actually a report, the table is the one way how I can make sure that the data I'm seeing is actually correct. Because I know what it means to deal with data. I know how unclean they can be. I know how it is easy it is to mix up some DAX calculations or something. So yeah, table is always a good thing. Definitely to have it while you're creating a report, but also as a reassurance or as a drill through for the reports. That's, as I mentioned, that is here to stay at least for a while. Especially with all kind of AI question tools coming up, you need a way to double check that it's actually correct, the answers that these AI are providing. But coming back to the overall feel and look of the report, I was very impressed with it, really, because I really liked how clean it looked. It made me feel I can read information. I know exactly where to focus. I know what each chart is showing me. So it was very easy on the eyes. Another thing, if you go to the second page, what I looked here, what I saw here, and what I really liked is those, well, not the slices, but you mentioned those kind of KPIs, KPI tabs on the top of the page. Those are all important metrics to look at, but when you kind of put everything in one page in different charts, if you look at it all at once, it's very hard to understand what's going on. So here, the solution, how to solve it, that kind of on the visual level, I see that I have a tab for each important KPI without actually, overcrowding everything. I really, really, really love that approach here. So yeah, very well done. Yeah, that's it from my side. Okay. I think we lost Ivis.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay,
we kind of didn't hear the last
Yeah.
comments from your side here.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, one thing that I was missing definitely in this report that I remembered at the very end is a clear all or reset button. Just because my personal experience is I like to play around with the visuals. I like to filter out data in different dimensions, different views, and so forth. So sometimes, you know, when I'm just clicking around, I end up with something that doesn't really suit what I'm trying to do because I play around with the visuals a lot. And I didn't have a quick way of getting back to sort of initial state. I had to go visual by visual and say, okay, unselect this, make sure I deselect this one. Do I have anything selected here? So a lot of guessing was happening just because I was simply clicking on something and drilling down or selecting or whatever it is. And I didn't have a quick way of going back. So that's one thing.
If I can mention, actually, I remember
Sure.
one more thing I wanted to add here, and it's not just for this report, but it was also a sort of a problem in others. We are looking at the data here for 3 seasons, and then when I look at the KPI cards, I suddenly see previous months. So it's kind of confusing to me what months we are talking about here, because overall, the data is for 3 seasons, so 9 months. So it kind of loses. So I would understand if I see this, if I select a specific month, then it's clear, okay. But if we are looking at the whole data set here, it's a bit confusing. So either there's some kind of explanation needed or adjustment. So when exactly that KPI is showing up. Yeah. That's all.
All right, let's go to the next one. So another submission that has gotten into the top 5 comes from Agbata Dickson Ukolojo. Sorry if I butchered your name, but I'm trying my best. So let's open it up. So for this report, I like the simplicity of it, but the one thing that kind of caught me a little bit off guard was that there's a massive area right here, which consists of 2 different visuals, which showcase the same principle, which is the timeline. Utilizes, okay, 2 different values, but it takes so much space. I would most likely combine these into one single visual, use one axis and the other axis to kind of compare the one against the other, and use that space for something else. It's just one of those comments, because what's going to happen is, you know, if I select something, it's basically doing the same in reverse, go back and forth, so you're wasting a little bit of space. That's one thing. The other thing that you should look into, and always, guys, make sure that this is noticeable, is whenever you're switching between the pages, make sure you highlight the page that you are on. I know that the report creator has done this in a different way. You actually have a name for the page right here, but as a navigational tool, the navigation buttons themselves should serve a purpose, right? It should tell you exactly where you are, whether you selected it or not. Once we're switching between the pages, again, a very small little detail is you can see the title kind of jumps up and down a little bit. I know it's annoying, guys, trust me. I've had reports with 40, 60 different pages. It's not recommended, but I've had those. Aligning all these elements is annoying, but it has to be done. Nobody wants to do it, but it has to be done. So just pay attention to these. But even without it, if I do the drill down on different visuals, for example, I do have the clear all button to kind of get me back to that initial state. I have a quick info overlay, which tells me the main object of the report and how can I interact with it. Under engagement, I like how it sort of was sorted, but I would probably change the layout a little bit. Sorry for that, guys. Just because it kind of seems like these cards are sitting alone, and then you have this massive block of 6 similar visuals, So what I would probably do is, as for the layout that you have in the background, because I'm assuming you're using a picture, right? You're not creating shapes one by one. And what I would have done is essentially create 3 blocks vertically, because you're talking about the same value in each of those columns, essentially. So it's something I would look into. Other than that, it looks good. What else? Switches. See, for example, in this one, if you compare this page to the first page, you're utilizing the space a little bit better because you have the timeline and then you're looking at other different dimensions. But again, it's a very small little thing that you can easily adjust. These little tabs, and one of the things that people kind of do not take full advantage of is how you can use bookmarks to essentially hide sub-pages within a page, right? You are in the performance page as an overall page, but then you go through either the cost or see cost per click or revenue or profit or whatever it is. You provide different views. And again, for these buttons, it's the same as for this one. Make sure I can easily understand which one is selected. Play around with the states of the buttons. Other than that, from my side, that will be it. Una, any comments?
Yeah, the one thing I noticed with this report and I liked is that for each visual, it is indicated to know what kind of drill down levels are there. Well, except there is one, I think, simple oversight where one visual is missing that, or maybe there are no drill down levels. Yep, there's none, but where there are drill down levels, it's indicated. And for me as a user, it's very helpful to understand, what to exactly I can find within that visual. Other thing, I think this is a report where we can say, okay, this is what we want to achieve with ZoomChart visuals in terms of interactivity and in terms of philosophy. What we want to achieve is there's no external slicers, no extra elements. You just go through the data by interacting with charts themselves. So very intuitive, very easy. Well done planning the report that way. Because you can always add extra slicers, extra things around it, but at the end of the day, it just only takes away your attention from the data. So if you can avoid it, then it's good to do that.
Yep. And trust me, going through the reports every single time, there's going to be more and more requests coming in. I also want to see that. Can we add that? So it's very important to create a good base that you can modify, and you're not creating that is something very sort of sensitive to any changes. You want to create a layout that can be easily adapted and adjusted if it's needed.
Yep. And one more thing that I really loved here from the storytelling perspective is how pages were named and grouped together. I mean, awareness, engagement, and performance. It kind of, for me as a marketing person, tells me in a very easy way. Okay, here we're gonna see, how much people we reached. Here we're gonna see how they were interacting with the campaign, and here I'm gonna see how the campaign performed itself. So, very, very well, very nicely named tabs.
All right. And the last submission that has gotten into the top 5 comes from, I'm apologizing up front if I mispronounce your name, but it's coming from Phùng Trí Hải. And let's open it up and see what we can do here. So straight off the bat, one thing that I like about it is and how the visual sort of focuses on the analytic part of it, right? Because even though these are just regular cards, the author has thought about 2 things. He's utilizing the cards and the actual sort of histogram in the background, showcasing the trend of it, so I can understand also how that has evolved over time. And he's comparing it to something in the past. But the only other thing that I would probably want to understand is if it's compared to last month, what is the current last month selected? Just as a highlight somewhere or as an info button anywhere so I can quickly understand it. because currently what I'm guessing is it's taking automatically the last that I have available and going one month back and comparing versus that value, but it's not explicitly told anywhere. So it's just, again, from an end user perspective, I want to understand how exactly or what exactly is being compared to what. For this particular report, one of the things that I noticed, and this is, again, another proof of why we recommend you guys to publish the reports and look at how they look in different environments, right? Because if we go here, this is the Power BI service side. So if I open up the same report, the same page, first initial view, what you're going to notice is the date actually has two components. It has a start date and an end date. If we look at the embedded report, it only has one date. Most likely it's just a scaling issue from Power BI itself, where there's one missing pixel, so it doesn't have enough room to kind of squeeze it in. But if you would play around with different environments, this is something you can easily notice, right? I mean, you're missing half of the dimension, because currently I can just choose 1 month, which makes no sense. So it's one of those. And this is actually where I kind of got hung up on the first try, because I was trying to understand, why is there only one option to select a month or a date? Like, okay, I select this one, it only kind of cuts it off, but it goes till the last. So my impression was, okay, so it's always going till the max date, I guess. Okay. I mean, sure, but it wasn't quite clear to me. And that's when I realized that it's just one of the things that happens, and why you have to double check reports in different environments and different sort of publishing phases. Other than that, one of the pitfalls of a lot of reports that we actually saw in this particular challenge is you were guys trying to showcase similar values. You were not utilizing, let's say, like in other reports where you had filled parameters. You can see that here we have multiple charts showcasing same dimensions, but with different metrics. And what's the biggest pitfall of that is that as soon as I select one of the slices, everything else kind of filters down to just a single slice. So if I will want to see a split by, since it's the same principle, channel, device, and add, I would have to click here. That drills down there. Now you can see there's cross-chart filtering. And I kind of have to do a lot of unnecessary clicks just to sort of get to a particular state, right? So always make sure that you're not creating these sort of traps for your end user, because trust me, they're going to try to do the same thing. And users who are new to Power BI, and if you're creating first reports for them, trust me, they kind of have a nag of breaking things. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're always breaking stuff. So it's one of the things to kind of take a look at. The other thing is, if we go through the pages, the one thing I noticed is, or what I was hoping to see is, on the first page, you can see we have an info button, which explains certain elements. But if I go to another page, the info button is no longer there. So if you introduce some sort of info button or overlays or something like that, make sure it's something that is reiterated in every single page. Because as an end user, I was just hoping to kind of have the same approach of giving me some additional insights into it. What else? These two essentially have very similar layout, just changing out the chart types, which is good. And another thing that I noticed here that you have to be cautious about is, in Power BI, if you go into the formatting options, there's a sort of a toggle that I forget if it's a toggle or if it's a check mark that you can enable, that remembers the layer on which the visuals are on. The reason why I'm going down this route, we're talking about this, is this visual right here. I like what the author has done here, right? You're essentially giving me the total in the center, so you're not needing to create a card or anything like that. But because you added it after the visual, if I just simply hover over the visual, I actually click on the card, and I cannot select the slices. The only way on how I can select the slice is if I click outside of the card, that selects the visual. You can see the card disappears, and then I can click on the slice. So you kind of can do it, but it's definitely not user-friendly. So be careful with these layers and how you're positioning the items. Again, it would be a very quick fix. These are just small little things. But overall, I think it's a very good report. It's rather clear and not kind of throwing stuff at you. As for the insight section or the comments, I would most likely add this as something that people can turn on and off. Because you don't necessarily always just want to have a block that's used for text. I much rather utilize the space for the visuals and only kind of call upon them when they're requested. That's from my side. Una, anything from your?
Yeah, I can add here that this was also one of the reports I was very much impressed with. And it was interesting to me as a marketing person to look at it. I was kind of excited to see, okay, the layout is nice, the colors are aligned. Well, there are some mix and matches somewhere, but overall, it's very easy on the eye. Yeah, I love how different chart types are used here. So it's really, for me, it's interesting to see, you know, data shown in different ways. For example, this trend over time, impression trend over time, you can clearly see, you know, on the one line, okay, I think it's the fall campaign that has had much more impressions, you know, than the other campaign. So that's a nice way how to visually show something. From the issue side, if you go to the last page, I think, yeah, what was confusing for me was the scatter chart here, because the legend kind of says there are three channels, but then they kind of are repeated on the scatter chart. So it's not really kind of clear right away what to look at. When you look more into detail, you can see, okay, there is split by other dimensions, and it's actually drill down. So using a ZoomCharts scatter here would be much better experience. But yeah, it's a bit confusing. Either it needs more information and context, or some kind of simplified version. Otherwise, it's not clear what all those dots represent within the same color. Yeah, but overall, very, very nice report. And it kind of combines very well together, you know, the analytics side and the interactions and drill downs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing before we give the announcement for the winner is we actually wanted to shout out an honorable mention to Okeh, just because this is one of the reports that might have gotten into the top 5, but it's, you know, we're always giving credit where credit is due. And what this report kind of utilizes in a very good manner is how you can still utilize Power BI without super drill down charts or anything like that to give a very nice overview of what's really happening. So what we have here is, you can see we're focusing on 3 different social media types, and we can either look at the KPIs or we can switch this to a matrix. Like Una said, right? Different audiences require different solutions. So it's a perfect approach for that. And this plus gives you a slightly different view. The one thing that this report also caters to very good is, since there's not a lot of visuals that interconnect to each other, you can easily use regular slices to sort of provide additional filters on top of it without worrying about that something is just going to end up with, you know, the same value everywhere. The only issue I really had with this particular slicer thing was, guys, remember, make sure you don't do this, right? Make sure that every single value has something to present. If not, then do not showcase them, because it's not necessary. And you have 2 different pages, and on the second page, you have still visuals, which is great. The only other thing that kind of confused me in this one was this part right here, where if I select month on a slicer, you can see it affects the cards, but not the visuals. But if I go the other way around and I select a month on a visual, this is kind of filters out everything. So make sure that you're always playing around with these visuals and sort of enabling the same experience. So if the experience that you're doing is that you select a month, it doesn't affect these visuals, just the cards, then make sure you play around with the formatting and interaction options between these visuals and do the same again. So that if you select a month, it filters out here, and for example, also this one, but it doesn't affect the other. So just play around with the experience itself. So it's just a small, slight little thing, but I think it would very help with the user experience. I don't know, any points of interest for you on this one?
I just want. I mean, I love this report for one specific reason. I finally see a creativity here in the challenge, which is meant for marketing reports. I mean, marketing people are creative people, and as much as we need analytics and data and digging into all that, when it comes to marketing reports, they are usually more flexible, more fun, more colorful than financial reports or I don't know, whatever, IT reports or something. So and this is something actually that was missing very much in this challenge if we compare it to other ones. Is I don't know, for some reason, and actually that's the question I want to ask you guys in the chat. You can just simply type in the answers. Why were you holding back on creativity here? Because I mean, I did mention in the webinar that when you do analysis on campaigns and analyzing actual ads and comparing them, most likely the end user will want to see how those ads are looking. What was different in spring or summer and fall, because that's probably part of the reason why one campaign was performing and the other one wasn't. So, and with AI, you can now generate all kinds of things. So only few reports had this, but I think they didn't make it to top 5. So that was one thing that was kind of missing here. So just a shout out from me for this report. Thank you for going a bit more creative way than others.
Yeah. All right. And now the most important thing, right? Telling you who won the challenge. So without further ado, the winner of the June 2024 challenge for OnyxData is Phùng Trí Hải.
Yay,
congratulations. I would shout, but I think I completely lost my voice at this point. So congratulations to you. It was a very well designed report. It was a good overview. And yeah, make sure, you post it on social media. And remember, guys, that if you have any questions regarding how Phùng did anything within the report, you can either download the PBX and look at it, or this is the reason why we ask for your LinkedIn. You can actually just reach out to Phùng yourself and ask any specific comments if you have, not comments, questions if you have, right? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's not going to reply to you. Okay, well, I can keep on my searching on myself, but use the resources, reach out to people, create your networks. It's what the environment and all these communities is really all about. Right. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. And for today, that's gonna be it. I wish you the best of luck and see you in the next challenge.
Thank you. And
bye everyone.